Okay, good morning, everybody, and good afternoon on the East Coast. Thank you for joining the Industrial Best Practices Zoom session for CORFAC. I'm David Boyd, the 2024 president of CORFAC, and I'm co-managing principal at Boyd Commercial in Houston, Texas. And today we have two panelists joining us to discuss the industrial market. We have Mark Childs, SIOR, is a principal at Capacity Commercial in Portland, Oregon. Mark focuses on industrial, high-tech, and manufacturing clients. We also have Conrad Jacobs, SIOR. Conrad is managing director at Affinity Corporate Real Estate Professionals in Indianapolis. Conrad focuses on industrial tenant representation, multi-market corporate services, and Conrad is also an active owner and investor in industrial real estate. And Affinity is a new member to CORFAC. They joined last year. So we welcome you, Conrad.
Thank you.
Hello, Mark.
Morning.
Okay. Want to make a couple of announcements first about upcoming events for CORFAC this summer. July 15th and 16th, we have our European Affiliate Summer Meeting in Berlin, Germany, which I'm excited to attend. And then this fall, we have the September 18th through 21st Fall Summit in Atlanta at the Epicurean Hotel. Here's a couple of key bullet points on how you can get the most out of CORFAC. Please go to our website, log in and update your member profiles on our website, including specializations, designations, your bio, current broker lists, brand with CORFAC on your email signatures, company websites, slide decks, and social media. And please use CORFAC value proposition when pitching new business. Attend our Zoom programs and conferences to share best practices. Actively contact colleagues in the network to introduce yourself and look for new business opportunities. And when you're doing business with your clients outside of the marketplace, think of CORFAC first and ask the question, where else may I help you? So this is meant to be an interactive event today. I've got a number of questions and topics to discuss with Conrad and Mark, but I encourage the participants to jump in with your own questions, either type them into the chat or we will pause along the way to get your input. Whatever topics we have and we're touching on, I feel like there's a lot of expertise out there. I'm thrilled that we have over 50 registrants today from across the country, and the majority of our firms are represented. So there's a lot of good talent on the phone today, and let's use this forum to share information. So right now I want to invite Mark and Conrad to give us an overview on what's happening both in Portland and Indianapolis.
Should I? I'll kick it off. In Portland, we're a second-tier market. We've got about 200 million square feet that we track. We've gone from 3% vacant a year or so ago to 5% vacant, and that seems to be trending northward. Our lease rates climbed probably 50% through COVID. They seem to be plateauing. We do quarterly or monthly, so we're kind of in the 80s, and we're seeing subleases pop back on, and the demand for big box is slowing. So it's slowing down, but for the 30 plus years I've been doing this, if it stayed like this, I'd consider it good. We'll just have to see what happens as the year unfolds.
Okay. And Conrad, what are you seeing?
So Indianapolis made the shift from a tier 2 market to a tier 1 market late 2022 into 2023. Overall size of the market, including new product delivery and second gen, about 347 million square feet. Right now, we've got a 9.7% vacancy rate with about 14 million square feet of new modern bulk products sitting vacant and a flex vacancy of about 3.1%. So average direct asking lease rate has settled just north of 650, probably closer to 670 a square foot. But there is one note you need to separate there, and that's that the mid-size multi-tenant rear load product, divided down to 30,000 square foot tenants, 50,000 square foot tenants, is pushing $10 triple net.
Okay, thank you. From my perspective in Houston, in the beginning of my career, Houston was sort of a secondary market, but it's definitely emerged as a primary market. And in some eyes, it's viewed as a gateway city. So we have about 820 million square feet of industrial space, and the current vacancy is about 7.5%, which has increased from about 5% a year and a half ago. And that's really entirely due to new construction deliveries. We're the sixth largest market in the country behind Chicago, Dallas, Fort Worth, LA, New York, and Atlanta. Last year, we were number 2 in delivery of space at 37 million square feet, which was an all-time high for us. The post-COVID absorption wave is starting to really moderate. It's still very positive, but in 2024, we are having lower rent growth, about 1.5% this year versus 5% each over the last couple of years. But we are continuing to get a lot of expansion and relocation in Texas from both the East Coast and West Coast, which is really driving our market. In Houston, we've got the Port of Houston. We've got one of the largest petrochemical complexes in the world, and we've got tremendous population growth across Texas that will continue to drive the industrial markets. So right at this point, I'd like to move into some Q&A and also encourage the participants to raise their hand and step into the conversation. But Mark, what's going on in your market today? What type of space is sought after by tenants and occupiers? And what changes do you see coming over the next 12 to 24 months?
Well, our distribution in general is waning as Houston grows in strength, kind of from the reshoring effect, which has become a fairly major nearshoring wave into Mexico. I spent the first 30 years of my business here with a catcher's mitt, just putting stuff in warehouses coming from China. So it is waning, and so for us, it's really the continued effect of this manufacturing reshoring. Probably with an emphasis, Boeing is big up here. We do a lot of Boeing subassembly kind of work here in the Portland area, and really driven by Department of Defense. You need to locate in the U.S. effect. So I would say, if anything, it's a demand for manufacturing, which historically for us is 10 to 20%, but that's growing. And as the de-China effect is waning, the next 12 to 24 months, I can kind of see that waning also compared to what was happening a year ago.
What kind of demand are you seeing right now?
In Indianapolis, we're really seeing demand for 2 different types of spaces. One of them is smaller, mid-size, 30 to 100,000 square feet. The largest lease deal we've done in the last 12 months in the market is 279,000 square feet. In Q3 of 2023, we did 900,000 square foot lease deals. So you're definitely seeing tenant shrinking. And the reason for that is we are a heavy 3PL market with the 6 major highways that cross through Indiana, about 7.5 million square feet of Amazon. And so the DC, requirements are waning off here too. The big bulk requirements, 800,000 to 1 million, are non-existent. And we're really seeing a big push to continue to grow Indiana as a manufacturing hub. Samsung's building a plant up in Kokomo, which is where Chrysler has a big plant. And Eli Lilly, I think, is up to about a $7.5 billion investment in Lebanon, which is north of Indianapolis, which helps us maintain the number 2 spot as most friendly for manufacturing in the country.
Good. I think in Houston, I've been extremely surprised at the continued strength of the owner user market and the strong desire to buy and own facilities, despite the high interest rates, with prime rate being 8.5. We have a number of people looking for bargains, thinking that there would be distress in the market. But what I found here with owner users is they're just putting more money down, 35 to 45%. So it's a lower leverage, and the interest rates are a cost of doing business. We are selling anything we can list for sale, regardless of class, in a very short cycle. When a new property comes to the market, there is a flurry of activity. But there's also a scarcity of buildings for sale. It's very tight. Infill industrial is very strong, very well occupied. The shallow bay, 20 to 60,000 square feet, is very strong, 2 to 3% vacant across the city. And as is, I'm assuming, with LA and Atlanta and Chicago, the bigger deals have dried up. The Amazons of the world and the e-commerce and the mega 3PLs are not doing really anything over probably 300,000 feet in Houston and across the country. So if you're shopping for big box space, 250, 300,000 square feet and up, I think they're holding the rents, but there's a dramatic increase in concessions and TI, and you'll have your pick of the litter on that front. We're also seeing a lot of manufacturing come to Houston. There's probably 2 million square feet of solar panel deals that have happened in the last 18 months, and they've been circling for years, but they're finally coming in. And we've seen a number of freezer developments, even on a speculative basis, which is really never been done before. But and that's primarily related to import and export of protein through the Port of Houston. Do I have any questions or comments from the audience? Sim, what do you
Hey, yeah, David, I would just echo what you guys were saying. The Atlanta market the last 12 months only did 6 deals that were 500,000 square feet and above, and no million square footers. The previous year we did 21 deals, and 11 of those were million square feet and above. So the big boxes are definitely slower. I agree with you. The 200, 300,000, if they need 500,000, a million, they're taking 250 or something like that. So the big box deal is a big story. Atlanta actually had negative net absorption this past year of about 11 million square feet. You'd have to go back a dozen years to see that, back when the capital markets melted down. Activity is still very good, but the activity went from like 75 million down to 46 million. Well, that's what we were doing prior to the capital markets meltdown back in 2008. So we still have activity. We're still doing a bunch of deals. We're just not doing the bigger deals. New construction slowed down because the Federal Reserve is making everybody keep more reserves. And so banks aren't going to lend on spec development, and 70 to 80% of what we build is spec. So that's part of that. And our vacancy's gone. We call it vacancy. It's really availability rate. I don't care if it's vacant or not. I care if we can lease it or sell it. So we now have 12.7% that's available in our marketplace, which is good because it gives us over 100 million square feet that we can go lease. And I also agree with you. I also agree with you about the buildings that are for sale. There's tons of things to lease, but not that many things to buy. And so when something comes on the market to buy, we're covered up with people wanting to take a look at it, go see it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of developers in Houston building smaller shallow bay buildings for sale or for lease. They're the local guys, entrepreneurs, anywhere from 12 to say 40 or 50,000 feet. And going rate for a new building with 5% office space is really right around $150 a square foot now, which is pretty amazing. But we continue to sell anything we list. So that's a really primary focus for us, is calling building owners, and whether it's owner occupied or whether it's investor owned, and just calling on owners to see if it's a good time for them to sell.
And I'll just touch on one more thing for Indy. We are seeing owner user purchase requirements tick up too, as Link and Exeter and Prologis hit these tenants with 40 to 50% rent increases and shrink that delta between what a mortgage payment is and what a lease payment is on second gen infill stuff.
Mark, you touched on manufacturing. What are the manufacturing tenants looking for in their facilities? What requirements are you seeing from them today?
When they come in, basically most of the products built out kind of 5% plus or minus for warehouse use. And when a manufacturer comes in, 80-90% of our product here is warehouse centric. They're wanting more office, and cost of construction still continues high. Labor shortages, high cost of labor. Most materials are holding, but it's still at a very high rate. They're not coming down. So they're trying to get more office, and because of the high cost of office, it's challenging. And then of course you throw in getting manufacturing usually wants more electrical, and all that's a year out. I'll let other folks expand on that. So that'd be my answer.
Conrad, what are tenants asking for in your market?
Well, in terms of manufacturing, we really don't have any groups coming in looking to lease. They're coming in and looking for the state and local municipalities to get behind them, and give them big incentive packages to bring their manufacturing operations either to a submarket of Indianapolis or one of the tertiary markets around Indiana. And then as far as tenants go, from a 3PL or distribution or service related standpoint, everybody wants 3-phase power these days. They want more amperage than they've wanted in the past. So these developers who are building these smaller, shallow bay, mid-sized buildings, they've got to make sure that they've got the amount of power, throughout the building in the right amount of breaker boxes, because sometimes they can't go back and get more power from the utility company.
I touched on it briefly with the owner users, but how are the interest rates and sort of the choppy economy affecting your transactions and the client's decision-making process now? We've obviously got an election coming in a few months. I don't think that's particularly driving the decision-making process, but how are the timelines going, and how is the financing affecting, I guess, both developers and users, and what financing is available out there?
I can touch on that a little bit. We just closed on a construction loan for 30,000 square foot building in a very high median household income submarket of Indianapolis. And our construction rate was about 8.25 floating. And we were able to do 80/20 LTV. So then stabilizing into about, well, it's the 5-year plus 250. So, you know, there's also swap products out there available, or forward swap products out there available for groups looking to purchase buildings where maybe they're using another LLC to purchase the building and leasing back to themselves. And those products typically get you maybe 50 basis points under, you know, where you'd be if you were just at a standard 5-year plus the 250. And basically you're betting on interest rates not going below a certain point. And, you know, if you take the right bet, you know, you're getting the difference and getting paid on that, with the bank kicking the difference in if the interest rates go up. So we haven't really seen an issue from regional banks, but, you know, bigger banks, you know, the collateral requirements on value add have gone way up. If the building's empty, but we have seen banks get creative and do 12-month IO reserves, and give a chance to stabilize out and then flipping into more of a stabilized commercial loan. So it's more of, you got to know what to ask for and what levers to push and pull. But we definitely, from our investing standpoint, have seen things definitely clamp down on value add and the amount of collateral you have to put down until the building's stabilized.
In Portland, what we're seeing is, as what's been echoed, very little product hitting the market. When it does, there's a high demand, and generally what it comes down to when you represent the owner is, okay, you got a choice. You want top dollar, but you're going to have to discount for the difficult financing, or we can get you top dollar if you do seller finance. And my last 3 deals have been seller finance, where folks can get in at more like the 5 to 6% range. Although one of them, my client, she needed liquidity. She's in her 70s, and she's the one my tax accountant says, if I pass, this building is right about the liquidity I need to execute my estate. So the poor buyer's got a due on death clause in the transaction.
Never good. Anytime you put death into one of the clauses, that's not good.
When interest rates were low, he was trying to harp her into selling and cashing out. And now he's hired a bodyguard to make sure she's safe until interest rates drop below 7%.
I didn't really touch on the development standpoint for larger, you know, land takedowns. You know, if you're looking to get financed and you have to put a capital stack together for equity, you're going to need a minimum of 12 months under contract to make a developer feel comfortable these days. And if it's anything over what we're seeing, 50 acres, it's going to be some sort of phased land takedown, with different closings at different points as you build one building, lease it, build another building, lease it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously developers have been hit pretty hard, but I expect they're still trying to do speculative construction in your market. They are in Houston. I mean, land sellers are reluctant to do phased takedowns today, and the prices are high. That was easy to do when the farmers owned the land, but now it's all traded up into syndications and investors, and
We're still all farmers.
you're still. But what we've seen, for example, we work with Trammell Crow here. They're really not doing anything over about 20 acres. They would, you know, in the past, buy 60 and have a multi-phase development, and they just can't get the debt and equity for that now. They want to get in They want something that's relatively shovel ready. And, build one building or two buildings and have a speed to market. So I think, pre the pencils down with the debt and equity crunch, we had probably 38 active institutional developers throughout the greater Houston area that were building when we delivered that 37 million square feet. We're probably down to 6 or 8 active sponsors here that are putting together land deals and planning to break ground, this year. So it's the volume is way down, but for a single phase, certainly for an infill deal or in a primary growing market, there are still industrial developers looking to do spec and buy land. I think I just heard about a deal that Conrad Bernard in our office is working on with a local group on a single building deal near our Beltway 8, which is our second outer loop. So it's a primary infill site, and I believe that site is trading for around $12 a square foot, which is back to our 2021, 2022 pricing. And that building will probably rent for 90 or 95 cents a square foot net.
Yeah, and just a general note on a national basis, groups like Ares and other groups that were putting money into these large developments, they were averaging about a 12% return on cost. That return has diminished down to about 7% is where they're comfortable making a deal work.
David, I'd mention one more thing, that although when loans come due, like on the office buildings, that's going to be a problem. But on the industrial part, rental rates have more than doubled and kind of mirrored the interest rates on loans. So when those loans come due and they got to renew their loans, I think they're going to be fine. So I don't think we're going to see a hard time in the industrial real estate market when these owners have to renew.
I was curious. I see Chris Gerlach. Are you participating? I was really curious about the Austin market. There was a flurry of activity when Tesla relocated and built 4 million feet. And there was also a flurry activity of tech companies and office development, and there was cranes everywhere. What's the sentiment today?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I don't have great numbers for you. The just to speak to the tech side, we've gotten particularly hit with the 1-2 punch, not only of remote work and hybrid work, but also the tech layoffs. A good chunk of our nicer office spaces were occupied by tech companies, and with the pullback on not only hiring, but then also layoffs, has really affected the office market. On the industrial side, different set of issues there. Tesla has seemed to largely gobbled up what they're going to gobble up for the time being. They appear to be going through a little bit of a retrenchment, trying to decide what they're going to be when they grow up. We're hearing talk about a Model 2, the Cybertruck. I don't think the sales of that have ramped necessarily like they have hoped for. But they are largely either have already or have nailed down the industrial space that they need. Samsung is still coming. We saw a spurt of activity with Samsung suppliers come in and get space. Not as much as you would think. A lot of those were, 10, 15,000 square feet, and some as small as, 2,500, 5,000 square feet. So not the big whopper 100,000 plus square feet bays that you would might have otherwise expected. Um, and just generally going to slow down activity. Trying to decide if that is just general market conditions. Is that the every 4-year slowdown that's attributed to the coming election or not? But there has been a little bit of softening in rates and activity on the industrial side.
Thank you. Conrad, Henry at Boyd Commercial has a question in the chat. Essentially, not a top 10 market. Indianapolis is not a top 10 market for square footage development, but was number 6 in leasing volume. And basically, what's happened? What is that doing to your rental rates? It seems like may possibly be a bit imbalanced, and I would assume the rents have been increasing significantly. But what's the effect?
Well, the mid-size stuff has gone up quite a bit, and then smaller than that has just skyrocketed. So, you know, if you're building a 15,000 square foot, you know, single tenant, you know, block and metal Butler building, you know, in the right market, you're looking at $15 triple net.
Wow.
So, you know, there's always been a lot of demand for smaller single tenant, you know, standalone buildings in our market, and not enough of them. That's why we build them. We try and build at least 1 or 2 a year if we can find a good piece of land that's not in an incorporated business park. But the bulk, you know, 500 and up, I mean, our rental rates aren't anything impressive. You know, they lag the US, you know, substantially.
Lower average.
Yeah, lower average. And now we've got 4 1 million square foot buildings sitting vacant right next to each other in a submarket called Mount Comfort. And then a couple more 800s next to those. And so, you know, we're not a million square foot building market. But when 9 of them got leased 1 quarter, everybody thought they'd just, you know, throw another one up on balance sheet after flipping the other one out. And so, you know, as far as a rental rate perspective, I mean, these buildings are going to have to trade for less on a lease rate because there's not enough wiggle room to go in and put up $1.5–2 million demising walls, and not put these developers upside down because they were built when interest rates were 3.5%.
Roughly, what's the range in pricing on those buildings, the larger ones?
We've had a couple millions lease in the high 5s, with some heavy TI requirement though, you know, about $1.5 million, $2 million in TI. So normally you'd see them in the low to mid 5s.
Okay. Paul in Kansas City says they've got 4 million footers that are finished and ready for occupancy. Paul, what are those? Do you know what those buildings are quoting on rent rate? And do they have any activity whatsoever?
I don't know because I don't really play in that sandbox, as you guys all know about me. But they're at $450 per square foot net. And 3 years ago, we would have thought they all would lease before they were finished. And then one of them didn't lease before it was finished, but the other 3 or 4 were still coming out of the ground. And now one of them has been sitting for 14 months. And if you, just like what Sim said, if you are looking for 500 or more in Kansas City, you can kind of write your own ticket. It's a little, it's not scary. It's just something we haven't seen for a while. We do see that the Class B market is actually pretty strong. It's we're seeing organic growth with the Class B market, just people selling more stuff, making more stuff. They're not expanding out of acquisition. They're expanding out of pure organic growth, which is great to see.
Good. Conrad, what are cap rates doing in Indianapolis? And then we'll open it up to the group. But I want to hear about Portland and Indianapolis, and I can speak to Houston.
So the cap rate comps that we do have are all for mid-size or second gen product that's realized its return on cost with certain developers. So, you know, it's all sub 300 And we're seeing some cap rate compression again, with things trading under a 6 cap, which in our market, is pretty good. So the last couple deals, well, it was a 2-building package, sold to Aries. That was a 5.75 cap. We've got another single tenant, cross dock leased to Nova Logistics. It's City Mark selling. It's about 150,000 square feet. That is at a 5.75 cap. So, surprisingly, seeing some good cap rate numbers, but not seeing it on any larger portfolios like we used to. And I don't think we'll see any, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 30 building portfolios trade in 2024.
Mark?
Our cap rates are right around 6, plus or minus. There's a national firm out buying FedEx cross docks, and they just closed here in a close-in core, close to the downtown location, great location. It traded at 5 3/4. We've got a 1,000,000 square foot, almost third generation, repurposed grocery distribution center, multi-tenant, mostly local credit, trading at 6 1/4. Everyone's trying to get them to split out the 150,000 freezer space and sell that separately. And then I've got 150,000 foot, essentially brand new construction, sale leaseback, and we've seen a couple offers just a smidgen above 6% on that.
Okay. In Houston for value add and core plus, we're between 5.5 and 6 1/4 on the cap rates. And so, debt rates continue to be higher than cap rates, which is hard to understand, but there's buyers, cash buyers, 1031 buyers, foreign sovereign buyers. So it's very competitive, and there's not a lot on the market. And then we also have a lot of manufacturing and standalone smaller metallic buildings and single tenant buildings, and those cap rates are in the low to mid 7s, typically trading with individual investors. So I have a question from Andrew in Austin. Are y'all able to speak to construction cost and construction pricing today? And has there been much movement this year in your markets?
Definitely on the concrete side of things, and obviously the number of subs bidding on jobs has gone up, just because there's less work with less construction. The one thing we've been surprised by, and I'm sure it's a national thing, is we're seeing higher pricing come back on MEPs, electrical, plumbing, and also HVAC numbers seem to have ticked up. So it's almost an offset. So we're almost still, right where we were last year, just because those numbers have ticked up. So
My comments really would just mirror Conrad.
Okay. Paul, are you seeing, what are you seeing construction pricing in Kansas City?
We're actually seeing it softening a little bit. We have, the thing we're seeing is that timelines for delivery have shortened. So pricing is a little softer, not as crazy as it was 4 years ago, but delivery dates are way down because people are looking for things to build and things to do. So if you want to build an appurtenance to your building or a new building, you can get it in a way quicker time frame than you could 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Okay. Well, I want to open it up to some Q&A from the audience. And I don't know who's got a burning question. One of my questions is who in attendance is currently working on multi-market business or potential Corfac referral business, and who is actually working with a Corfac partner firm right now as we speak? Is there anybody in the audience that can give us an example?
I would chime in. I referred up to Andover. Seattle's about 200 miles north. I got a client with just a classic 9-acre iOS site, small maintenance building on it. And Bruce Clarkson's been giving us great support on that.
Excellent. Well,
We're not working with another Corfac office on this, but we have a group we've worked with since 2017. They do development and value add acquisitions as well as cold storage, ground up development. And they're actively looking for sites for cold storage in tier 1 markets, and also looking for value add with a little hair on it. That's a good story that can trade on the capital markets platform. If it's off market, then even better.
okay. I know one, I looked and I think we've done 2 or 3 network referral deals over the last 3 years each. And I'll speak for Mike Boyd, who's on the call. He is working currently with Western Pacific Building Materials, a company that was originally referred to us out of Portland and Mark's company Capacity. But they're in the process of acquiring a new building in Dallas that's about 103,000 square foot distribution center that Mike and Joe Santaleri at Bradford are working on right now. So that'll be a very nice referral deal for us. That'll occur this year. So do I have any other questions from the audience right now or commentary on your market?
I have a question regarding electrical power. This is Eric Wren out in the San Francisco Bay Area. We deal with PG&E. If you want to get electrical power, it's a 2-year wait.
Well, and one of the speakers referenced a 1-year wait. We have seen in Houston a number of large manufacturing requirements needing 4,000, 5,000, 7,000 amps. And the lead time in our marketplace for that is about 18 months because you're, ground mounted transformers. It's very difficult. So I think we've lost some deals where people were looking to get up and running, not go through the new construction process, but they can't get the power. And so that's a big problem. If you do have an older or an existing manufacturing facility that has got heavy power in a large footprint, I would certainly be marketing that on a national or international basis through all the channels available, because power is a huge issue. And we're actually seeing some of the traditional distribution developers and spec developers double or triple their base building power service over their typical specifications in the event they can convert that distribution center to a manufacturing facility. And so I think they will. Those have done that are making a much bigger investment on the front end, but it makes it a lot more versatile, particularly now when the 3PL market is slowing and e-commerce and all the retailers are on the sideline for expansion.
Yeah, and if you're curious ever to your market and you want to see if you're getting, upgrades in power, or if you're getting more power, you can get on the MISO website. misoenergy.org, and you can actually see what they have planned for long-range transmission lines coming through your market. And basically, they're the connector of the power. They get it to the power company, and then the power company takes it from there. And they're the big KVA lines that bring all the megawatts of power that we need now with data centers and large scale manufacturing.
I moved a guy a year or two ago that does, he distributes transformers, major electrical componentry. And he basically said, and we're seeing that the lead times are dropping, roof structures, dock door systems, et cetera. HVAC was, a lot of them were 6 months to a year. Now they're back to more reasonable times. But he said, when the electric cars, you don't just need more electrical in the garage, you need more electrical through the whole system. So the demand for electrical, he said, through 2030 is just going to be an ugly situation.
Thanks, Mark. So I received a question from Chloe at Stubblebine, and I'll ask you guys and also open it up for conversation. This is kind of general as it relates to industrial brokerage, but Chloe asked us, what are the benefits of landlord versus tenant representation? And what are the best ways to fill the pipeline? And I often ask myself that. It's, I mean, from a firm perspective here at Boyd, we've really always been sort of listing focused and listing centric, with the thought that having a tangible product gives you a reason to go talk to people and market that facility. Curious who in the group is more tenant focused or even solely tenant focused. We don't find that much in Houston, although there are a few. But can you all speak to the benefits of one or the other as far as setting up your new business and where the most opportunities may arise today?
Well, obviously, if you have more listings on the landlord side, you're going to get more phone calls. Some of those phone calls aren't going to work out for that particular listing. They may or may not be represented from a tenant rep perspective. So then you're flipping them into a tenant rep deal. So, it gets you more exposure.
Yeah.
I guess my comment would be more market cycle related. When you get in the biz, you end up generally tenant repping unless you come onto a good team that's got a lot of landlord control, because that's how you learn the biz. And keep in mind, for the last 4 years, it's been impossible to unseat landlord reps because the stuff's been leasing itself. Now is when you want to start paying attention and taking out to lunch the landlord owners, because they're going to start to get frustrated with their teams. So there's the business changes in each business cycle, and so you got to change what you focus on.
Yeah, I know from some of our agents, when they're prospecting, one of the things they look at through CoStar and other sources is days on market. And anything that's been on the market, 270 days becomes a target call. And the listing agreements are typically 6 months at a time with the institutions. And so we're regularly calling, looking for soft spots, looking for vacancies that have age on them, and also identifying building ownerships where there are current sublease spaces available, which signifies there's going to be some movement there. And those are the owners that we're calling on. I think from a tenant representation, certainly from a corporate rep and a pure tenant side, that's a really high touch endeavor. I think it takes a long time to get in with the company, to get in with the tenant. And you've got to drip on them. You got to be there at the right place. after you get the assignment and conclude it, you've got to continue that high touch so that if they have a question, they need some help, you're top of their mind. And that's hard to do when you're out driving around, servicing listings. It may take a day or a half a day. Houston's a large market. So I do think the tenant representation can be more lucrative and ultimately can have a shorter sales cycle in the transaction. But it takes a really focused effort, primarily, at least from our perspective, on a sub-market and product type basis to talk to everybody 4 times a year. And but there are a couple agents in Houston that do it and do it very well, and they're consistently top producers. So I like the idea of tenant representation, but we're trained to go after the listings here.
So David, how do you go after listings if they're listed? Because our approaching listed owners is illegal in both Kansas and Missouri.
That's a great question. You do it very carefully. We're not going to interfere with existing listings, but again, it's a days on market, and there's a lot of examples of days on market over 360. So for better part of a year, and those are the ones that we're calling on. And with the resources today, we use ZoomInfo, a number of other things, but it's pretty easy to put together an email list in very short order and send out 20 or 30 targeted emails to property owners. And we also use direct mail. So, sending somebody a market update or a available listing in their area, you're not directly soliciting the listing from another active agent. Do we have any other questions or comments from the audience?
David, there is one question in the chat. You have a chance to look at that.
Okay, from Jim McGee. What have been some of the largest expenses and hurdles in regard to construction of chilled refrigerated product in your markets? And I'm assuming you're talking about freezer cooler space, and it's expensive and highly specialized. That's the real challenge, and it's a real niche market. A lot of people don't understand it, so the capital is hard to get. But I would say just the overall cost of the facility. And I was involved in one project that was a speculative 270,000 square foot freezer. It's the first spec deal to be done in Houston. It started as a build-to-suit. The tenant was acquired by another company during the process, so they exited the deal, and the developer decided to go forward with the project, which was very risky, with the hopes of landing a tenant. There was a number of requirements in the market. They designed the building to be flexible with any temperature between cooler and freezer, to be divided into 3 chambers, to have an extra large cold dock for processing, to try and give it the most versatility. And when we were marketing the facility, we were calling on companies that were leasing from other 3PLs, and we determined that they look at these facilities as pallet positions, not as square footage. How many pallets of my product fit in there? And we found a bunch of interest. for 2,000 pallets or 20,000 pallets, but they all needed somebody to handle the product, and we're not in a position to take down 70,000 square feet, much less 270,000 square feet. So the developer was able to bring in a third-party operator. We had tenant demand, and they master leased the building to a 3PL and have since then filled it up. But what we found out is that that business is very much an operator and a value add business, particularly if there's any processing or handling involved. That the food importers and exporters are really looking for a 3PL to handle the product.
Yeah, and to just piggyback on what you said, really the two biggest constraints are the market that they want to build in, and if they can achieve the rental rates based on construction costs and height restrictions. So the taller a freezer cooler building goes, actually the cheaper it becomes from a price per square foot perspective. So we help facilitate the land takedown with Titan, with Sandstone as the GP in San Antonio when I was at Avis and Young. And I don't know if any of you know Jeff Greenwald, but he's probably one of the most prolific builders of cold storage in the country. He was with a company called Victory USA. But if you can't get to at least 50 feet and 150,000 square feet around the perimeter, it just makes it very tough because you're talking almost $30 rental rates.
Yeah, the deal we did, the starting rate was about 25. On a,
Anything under 25 just really doesn't.
well, this was built pre-pandemic and concluded in 2020. So we had a lower basis in construction and land.
There's no freezer cooler being built in the Indianapolis market because it can't achieve the rental rates.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you all for attending. We look forward to seeing you in Berlin in July and Atlanta in September. And enjoy your lunch hour.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, guys.